It's another edition of Time About the Movies, a day late and a dollar short. Sorry, there was no video yesterday, but today we're taking a look at the films of May 3rd, 2002, and really, there's no bigger new release to talk about than the first new release that we have here, the movie that pretty much changed the game for how big a movie can be on its opening weekend, because our first movie that we have here is Sam Raimi's adaptation of the classic Marvel Comics character, a character that had been waiting to get to the big screen treatment for over 25 years at this point, and finally got it thanks to Raimi, and the end result was Spider-Man.
He saved my life twice. Wow. And I've never even seen his face.
When you look in her eyes, you know what kind of man you want to be.
Watch out!
You feel stronger, weaker at the same time.
Do I get to say thank you this time?
PG-13.
So how late back was the Spider-Man movie in development? Back in 1986, when Canon Films was the big deal, they actually had a promo reel with a lot of movies that either did not happen or didn't even come close to happening or happened and then went on to become some of the most notorious bombs in movie history. Stuff like Superman 4, Over the Top, you name it. But in that package, there was one movie in particular that is of note in this situation here, and that was a live-action adaptation of Spider-Man.
Within this unsuspecting city, history's greatest experiment creates tomorrow's greatest superhero. Spider-Man, the movie. A live-action spectacular directed by Joe Zito, based on the characters created by Stan Lee.
So at one point they were going to do a Spider-Man movie, but unfortunately it got stuck in development hell. Canon eventually shut down, and Spider-Man was eventually licensed to Sony Pictures in 1999 after it acquired options from both MGM and all previous scripts drafted by Canon, developed by Canon Films, Carol Co., and New Canon. Exercising its option on just two of those elements, they had this multi-script acquisition, which was credited to, of all people, James Cameron, Ted Newsom, John Brocato, Barney Cohen, and Joseph Goldman, and who was the pen name of Menahem Golem of Golden Globus, and a later treatment credited solely to Cameron. And so Sony basically took that Cameron material and hired David Koepp, the writer of Schindler's List, to basically write a script for it. They had a number of different directors involved at one point. Roland Emmerich was attached to it, Tim Burton was attached to it at one point, Chris Columbus, David Fincher was attached to it at one point before Sam Raimi eventually got the job in 2000. And script went through some rewrites, and then in the summer of 2001, when people went to go see movies like Jurassic Park 3 and American Pie 2, they saw a teaser trailer for a particular movie that is coming out next summer, and that was, of course, the Spider-Man trailer that you're going to see here. A great trailer that unfortunately I can't show all of it because of copyrights and all that, but and of course that and the poster that came out around that time, a teaser poster with the World Trade Center and Spidey's eyes, had to be banned because a couple months later, September 11th happened. So that was one of those things that it's a great trailer and a great poster that unfortunately will probably not be seen on any official physical media release, but at least it's still available out there through the magic of the internet, so you can still see it out there, and I recommend checking it out because it really is a fantastic teaser trailer. But not only that, but for the time, this movie was the only film to ever reach $100 million in its first weekend, which was unheard of. I mean, the biggest opening weekend up to that point happened only 6 months ago with Harry Potter, which brought in over $90 million. I think it was around close to 91 million, if I'm not mistaken. But that was the top right there, because nobody really thought that anybody there was really a belief that nobody could really sit in the movie theater be in a movie theater and have it be packed as much as it could to make over $100 million. But this movie proved that to be not the case, because $114 million on its opening weekend, which was unheard of back then. Nowadays, if your movie didn't open to $100 million, it's officially considered a flop most times. But you know, I mean, if they didn't think $100 million was going to put a whole bunch of seats in the theaters, imagine what would have happened 17 years later when Avengers Endgame made over $337 million on its opening weekend. Like, but yeah, it was the first movie to ever reach $100 million on its opening weekend. It had the largest opening weekend gross of all time. Was the most successful film based off of a comic book, and made over $821 million worldwide. It was the third highest grossing film of the year, even though it was the number one domestic film of the year, and the 44th highest grossing film of all time, seventh at the time of its release. So, and here's the interesting thing about this: like Spider-Man made all this money. No movie came close to making $100 million until Shrek 2 did it in 2004. That's a 2-year gap. So nowadays, it's kind of common to have a movie go hit $100 million or more, even $200 million or more. But back then, that was unprecedented that this movie did that. And it took 2 years before another movie even came close to topping that marker there. But that just goes to show you what the lasting power of this movie was back then when it came out. So over 20 years later, how does the film itself hold up? Well, the story here, do I really need to tell you what it is? It's the origin story of Spider-Man. You have a high school geek, Peter Parker, played by Tobey Maguire, who gets unexpectedly bitten by a radioactive spider while on a class field trip. He then starts to feel sick and on the cusp of death that night, only to wake up the next morning feeling much better and realizing that he's got the superpowers of a spider, including climbing up walls and using web slingers to fly around New York City. Meanwhile, an experiment turns Peter's best friend Harry's father, Harry played by James Franco, the father being Norman Osborn, played by Willem Dafoe, into a supervillain known as the Green Goblin. Peter has to stop the Green Goblin from taking over the world and saving his crush, Mary Jane Watson, played by Kirsten Dunst. I mean, do I really need to say anything more about this movie that hasn't already been said? It's a really great movie. A flawed movie, yes, but a great movie, too. You know, you could tell Sam Raimi was a rabid Spider-Man fan, and when a director has such a love for something and makes a movie off that subject, most of the time the film does not usually end up as well as it should be. But with Raimi, you can definitely tell that he didn't let his love of the character overshadow what he had to do to make a great movie. And it really does show. Tobey Maguire creates this incredible resemblance of Peter Parker as both the high school geek and the radically altered superhero that he becomes, and the chemistry between him and Kirsten Dunst is very believable and very romantic at times. I mean, that scene where he's dangling upside down and she kisses him in the rain, it's just like, that's one of those iconic romantic movie moments. That's from a comic book movie, not from a romantic comedy or anything, but it's just so well done. I mean, most of the action sequences are very fun to watch. There are still a lot of things about the action sequences that are still pretty cool. The shots of Spider-Man flying across the city is well done. I mean, they still look pretty impressive for the most part. I'll get to that in just a sec. I'll get to the flaws of that in just a second. And it does move at a good enough pace where you never get bored. You get so invested in the story and what's going on, and you just really do feel the weight and the massiveness of this particular film that makes it the classic that it is. But that said, there are a lot of major flaws that hurt the quality of the movie. For one thing, there's a point in the middle of the film where the movie just stops to promote Macy Gray. You know Macy Gray, that character, that singer who was around for a little bit here in the early 2000s, and in here it feels kind of pointless since even by that point in time, she, like I said, she was already moving out of obscurity, and nobody really ever talks about her nowadays. And another thing about the movie is that as much as Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker is very good, the big problem with Peter Parker in this movie is that he doesn't do the snarky comments like Spider-Man should have. I mean, the one scene where he actually has a snarky comment, it's so bad that even the actors on the commentary think the line is bad. I mean, it's hard to believe it took us until Tom Holland to get the Spider-Man that we've been waiting to see, a character that was well put together, but also can have the snarky comments as well. And that's why I think Tom Holland does a very good job as Spider-Man in those movies. And the scene is also the perfect segue into a lot of the biggest problems with the movie, specifically the Green Goblin. Like, Willem Dafoe is a great actor, and he could have made a great Green Goblin, but he plays it so over the top, and it's bad. It's really, really bad, but it's bad in kind of a fun way too. Like, it's ridiculous. The costume he wears is too much. it's too cheap looking. Like, it looks like something that does not exist in this world that they're setting up in. But then again, there's a lot of cheap stuff in this movie. I mean, the trailer right there, the first commercial I showed you, basically shows you that one of the scenes that was so memorable in the movie, where, you know, Spider-Man is lifting Mary Jane away from the Green Goblin's attack, and that's supposed to be. It looks like a dummy, and they had that in all the trailers, thinking that that was going to be like the big moment. It was one of the big moments in the movie that everyone's going to remember. Well, they remember it for not the reasons that you think they would remember it, because it's obviously a dummy Spider-Man. It's not actually him, and it's just like, even Kirsten Dunst gets this look on her face, like, this thing is not really Peter Parker. This thing is not Spider-Man right now, and like, yeah, it looks pretty bad, and there are a lot of effects in here that can look really good sometimes, but then there are some effects that look pretty bad, like cheesy bad, but also really, really bad. Like, they really thought that they were going to get away with this. Like, but going back to Willem Dafoe, I was thinking about the 1989 Batman movie, and I wouldn't be surprised if Dafoe tried to do something similar to Jack Nicholson's Joker in that movie. But the main difference is that Nicholson was playing that role over the top, like the Joker is supposed to be. The Green Goblin is supposed to be over the top. He's a straightforward villain, and Dafoe, I think, really kind of ruined what could have been a great villainous role for him, at least in this movie, because he did get a little bit of a when they brought him back for Spider-Man No Way Home. That's the Green Goblin that I wanted to see in this movie. I think that was a much better representation of the Green Goblin in that movie, but in No Way Home. I think they did a better job there than they did in here, and I think that was part of the reason why they brought him back there, to kind of give him a little bit of a reconciliation and give him the role that he was born to play. But I compare Spider-Man to the 1989 Batman movie. It's a really great and fun action movie, but it definitely has a lot of flaws to it. And kind of like with Batman back then, it changed the game for superhero movies in general, specifically Marvel movies, because now this has become the norm. We get Marvel movies every single year, and it all kind of started with X-Men and Spider-Man, and then there are a few hiccups here and there that we'll eventually get to. Stuff like Daredevil, stuff like Hulk, stuff like Elektra, and then the game really changed for good when Iron Man came out, which we'll delve more into that when we get to that one in about 6 years' time. But Spider-Man, I think, is a great origin story for a great superhero. It was only the beginning of things to come for Spider-Man, because 2 years later they would get a sequel. But we will delve into that once we move forward into 2004. But Spider-Man, what more do I gotta say? It's a classic film, well done superhero movie for the most part. Fun, can be over the top and silly as well, but it's still a lot of fun. So who was going to open up against Spider-Man? What two movies were going to try to combat Spider-Man and bring some counter programming in there? There were two of them, but neither one of them proved to be successful. And let's start off with the first one we have here, and that is Deuces Wild.
How to protect the neighborhood. Stephen Dorff, Brad Renfro, Veruza Balk, Frankie Muniz, Balthazar Getty. I run the Deuces. I don't back down from nothing. Matt Dillon, Drea DiMatteo, James Franco, Johnny Knoxville, and Norman Reedus. That's Viper's territory. I'll take care of him. It just comes back to me. I don't know you. This Friday, two worlds will collide. Come on my block again and I'll kill you. And things are gonna get wild. Get all the guys down here now. Deuces Wild. It's going down tonight. Rated R. Starts Friday.
Yeah, it's not a good sign if the first thing the announcer is saying is Stephen Dorff. Like, that's not a good sign. Even in 2002, that's not a good sign. But the story here of Deuces Wild is you have two brothers, Leon and Bobby, who are the members of a street gang in Brooklyn known as the Deuces. Their brother was killed by a drug overdose a few years earlier, and the gang is determined to keep drugs off the block. Another more vicious group known as the Vipers is a possible threat to Leon and Bobby's efforts. The Deuces are determined to do whatever is necessary to keep drugs off their block, even if that means dying. And this is a corny gangster film. I mean, it's a crime drama. You've got Stephen Dorff, Brad Renfro, James Franco, Matt Dillon, Veruza Balk, Drea DiMatteo, Balthazar Getty, Matt Dillon, Frankie Muniz, but Norman Reedus. I mean, a good cast overall in here, except for the guy who's at the top of the charts here. But this is a really stupid movie. And Martin Scorsese was actually one of the original producers on here and took his name off the film. Like, that's how you know it's bad, when Martin Scorsese wants nothing to do with this. And 3% on Rotten Tomatoes, which I know I keep talking about Rotten Tomatoes not being a good source to go to, but if it's 3% on Rotten Tomatoes, then you know something is bad here. The idea just sounds really corny. Like, it's supposed to be it feels like a much more serious version of West Side Story, except without the music and like Like, it's really, really dumb. It's a stupid movie on so many levels, and not even the actors that they have in here that are good actors can save it from being a complete mess of a film that is just... It just feels like it was a mess on so many different levels. Like, nobody really knew exactly what they wanted to do with this storyline here. What was the end result here? What was the point of all this? Like, what was the objective here? Like, if you want, like, this doesn't feel like a film that should be rated R. This feels like something that they wanted to try to squeeze a PG-13 out of, but it's just like, no, we got to make it R because, you know, we can't have a PG-13 storyline sending around getting drugs off the streets. I mean, who wants to do that? I mean, in fact, I don't even know if that's the case here. I just remember this movie being really, really stupid. That even if it was a PG-13 movie, that would probably make it even worse than what this is. It's just like, and like, the elements for an R-rated film, they're clearly not in there. Like, you expect to be promised some TNA in here, and you don't really get it in this movie. You really do not get it at all. It's barely there, and it doesn't really amount to anything significant. Even the violence isn't all that unique or exciting. The action sequences aren't even that unique or exciting. These shootout scenes are not that exciting. There have been so many better movies of this type that you'd be better off just watching those movies and not watching this garbage right here, because this is a bad, bad film. It just, like I said, if Steven Dorff is the first thing they're trying to sell you on, that's a bad sign right from the get-go. So yeah, avoid this movie like the plague, for the love of God. But so that's Deuces Wild. So let's go ahead and move on to the last movie we have here, and that's Woody Allen's latest film, Hollywood Ending.
Dr. Kevorkian. I gotta get a picture. When you're cold, you're cold. This is humiliating. I'm here shooting a deodorant commercial. I got 2 Oscars.
He acts with a fine director. There's nothing I wouldn't do sexually for him.
You should take a full-page ad in the DJ magazine stating that, because you'll never stop working.
DreamWorks Pictures presents Woody Allen, George Hamilton, Taya Leone, Barbara Messing, Mark Rydell, Treat Williams, Hollywood Ending.
He's a genius.
So in Woody Allen's latest film, he plays the main character, Val Waxman, who is a once prestigious film director who suffers hysterical blindness due to the intense pressures of directing. And you see there Taya Leone, George Hamilton, Deborah Messing, Mark Rydell. They're among the cast in this as well. Tiffany Thiessen. This is one of those movies where it's better than some of Woody Allen's last movies, but it suffers a lot from the same problems that the last Woody Allen movie he made was, The Curse of the Jade Scorpion. And that was the fact that he's putting himself in the title role, and he's already in his 70s. I think he's already in his 70s at this point, if I'm not mistaken. He's getting close to 70 in this 1935, so he was about 67 years old. Like 67 years old, and his love interests are Deborah Messing, Taya Leone, and Tiffany Thiessen. And it's just like, they're much younger than he is in this movie, and I think that's really one of the biggest problems with the movie here. But unlike something like The Curse of the Jade Scorpion, there are things about this movie that I do like. I think there are some things about the film that are very funny, and this was actually the first Woody Allen movie I really wanted to see, because I saw the trailers for it. It looked kind of funny, and I thought there was things about it that did kind of work. I thought there were some elements there that I thought were very amusing, and sure enough, when I watched it again, it's definitely there, but really, the magic really isn't there anymore for Woody Allen at this point. It feels like he's really kind of like chugging along here, but he would have a little bit of a reprieve once this movie came out. Like, it started with Anything Else, which I think is a criminally underrated Woody Allen film with Jason Biggs and Christina Ricci, and then followed that up with Match Point and then Scoop, and then he made these, and Vicky Cristina Barcelona. There was a point where he was coming back from some really lackluster films, and this was probably the last one. This was the last one before he started his eventual renaissance here. It's not a bad Woody Allen movie, but I'll be honest, the reason I saw this in 2002 was because, you got Tiffany Amber Thiessen, and of course she, for some reason, after Saved by the Bell, all the people from Saved by the Bell had to get stripped down their clothes. I mean, Elizabeth Berkley did it in Showgirls, Lark Voorhees kind of did it with How High, and then Tiffany Thiessen. I mean, this is probably like the third or fourth movie I've seen her in after Saved by the Bell ended, where she's in sexy lingerie, and it's just like, that's a win-win in my book. I mean, for the 13-year-old that wanted to see the film, but look, like I said, it's not the worst Woody Allen movie, nor is it really a good one either, but it is better than some of the ones that he'd done before this, like The Curse of the Jade Scorpion. I think it's a far superior film, but I think it is. I think there are elements to it that are good, but not enough for me to really recommend it in general. So take it for what it is. If you can stand to see a couple of good, decent moments in here, it's good for one time. It's maybe good for a one-time watch, but you'll probably never want to watch it again afterwards. So that's all I got to say about that one. Hollywood ending. And so with that said, we wrap up another edition of Time About the Movies. We'll continue into the summer of 2002 with the next episode, taking a look at Richard Gere and Diane Lane in the erotic thriller Unfaithful. We also have DJ Qualls and Eddie Griffith in the comedy The New Guy, and also Ultimate X, the movie. Because, you know, this is still the late 90s, early 2000s, when everything was extreme to the max. It's just like, nah, we'll take a look at those movies. 3 films to look at next time around, and that'll be on the next episode. But until then, thank you so much for watching. And if you want to see more videos like this, please hit the playlist on the next page. Check out the previous episode. And also, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button if you want to see more videos like this on this channel. So, with that said, I'm off. I will see you guys next time. And until then, as always, take care.